So I'm going to call the meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization Administration and Finance Committee meeting to order. I will now read the virtual meeting guidelines, or should I do the notice of discrimination? You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. These are the meeting guidelines. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. Participants can mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking, please. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand button. You can find this by clicking on either the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. I will then call on participants in the order in which hands are raised. If you're on the phone, you may use *9 to raise your hand. And if you have any technical difficulties, please contact the inestimable Jonathan Church via the chat box, via email at jchurch@ctps.org, or at 857-702-3709. I will now read the accessibility statement. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Mr. Jonathan Church, MPO staff at jchurch@ctps.org, or 857-702-3709. Okay, and you can also use that number to sign Jonathan up for spam. He loves it. Introductions. Good morning. My name is Brian Kane. I'm the Executive Director of the MBTA Advisory Board, and I am Chair of the Administration and Finance Committee, and I am happy to be here. Derek, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. Derek Cravat from MassDOT Office of Transportation Planning.
Eric.
Good morning, Eric Barrasso with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Mr. Chair Diggins.
Yes, I'm Leonard Diggins. I'm here with the Advisory Council, and I'm even happier to be here. And Jonathan Church isn't only inestimable, he's inevitable. Just saying, you know.
Thank you, Len.
The inevitable Jonathan Church.
Inevitable.
I like it. I think that's all the membership. Is Tyler on the committee? He probably should.
He's not. No, it's it would be Dennis. He's the only one missing.
Okay. Jonathan, why don't you introduce yourself, and then you can tag some of your colleagues to go next.
Okay. Jonathan Church, manager of MPO activities with the Boston Region MPO. Why don't I pass it to Tegan?
Tommy Guard, Tegan Tyke, Executive Director of the Boston Region MPO.
Pass it on,
I have to
Tegan.
pass it off. Sorry. How about I pass it off to Haral?
Hi, I'm Haral Gandhi. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations at CTPS. And I'll pass it off to Silva.
Good morning. My name is Silva Vazian, and I'm the project accountant at CTPS. And who else is left? Let me see. I will pass it on to Sandy Johnson.
Good morning, Sandy Johnson. I'm a transportation planner with the staff to the MPO, and I will pass it on to Logan.
Hi there, Logan Casey. I'm an administrative coordinator with the Boston Region MPO, and I'll pass it on to Srilekha.
Good morning, everyone. Srilekha Murthy. I'm the Unified Planning Work Program Manager with the staff to the Boston Region MPO, and I will pass it to Annette.
Good morning, everyone. Annette Demsher, Director of Policy and Planning at CTPS, staff to the Boston Region MPO. And I will pass it off to Gina.
Good morning, everyone. Gina Peril. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Boston Region MPO staff. I think that covers us on the staff side.
Yes, it does.
Thank you. And thank you. Tyler, do you want to say hello?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hold on one second. And can you all see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, yes, this is Tyler from the Metro West Regional Transit Authority Grant Support Coordinator, just here to observe and note any relevant topics that may come up.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate
Thank you.
your attendance. Okay, we're going to move on to public comments. And I don't believe there's anyone from the public here besides Tyler, and he just said hello. So I think we'll move on. Unless anybody sees anybody or there's anybody on the phone that I can't see. Okay,
Nobody else.
so we're going to move on to the summary of the August 25, 2022 meeting. This was all in the meeting materials. I wonder if anybody would like to make a motion with respect to this item.
I'll make a motion to approve the summary of the August 25th meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Simultaneous second. I love it. Jonathan, can you please call the roll?
Ryan Kane,
Yes.
Eric Barassa,
Yes.
Derek Cravat,
Yes.
and Leonard Diggins.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was great. So item 4, update on state fiscal year 2023 operating budget by the amazing Harel.
Thank you, Brian. So this morning I will provide a brief status update of the revenue and the expenses that are for Q1 of the state fiscal year. And just a reminder that our operating budget operates on the state fiscal year cycle. So we just completed Q1 on September 30th. The numbers I will be reporting are actual revenue received and expenses incurred through September 30th. Next slide, please. Thank you, Jonathan. So this chart on this slide represents our projected revenue versus our actual revenue for the first quarter. The blue bars represent projected and the orange bars represent the actual revenue that we've received as of September 30th. The first 5 set of bars are the major revenue sources for CTPS. When we did the budget development and presented the budget before the state fiscal year started, we had these 5 categories of revenue that that we get for CTPS. Majority of our revenue is under what we had projected for Q1. Overall, our revenue received is about 19% less than what we had projected for that quarter. One of the major reasons for this is it continues to be the staff shortage that we're experiencing. We were able to hire staff, but not at the level that we had expected to on July 1st. So we hired about 7 staff members in the first quarter, but they ended up being hired like later in the quarter, or and we also had some staff leave in Q1 that was not expected. Next slide, please. This chart represents the projected expenses in the blue bars versus the actual expenses that were incurred in the orange bars. The expenses are broken down into 3 categories. The first one is the operating expenses that include a majority of our fixed expenses, such as rent, internet, IT-related expenses, etc. And then the second category is administrative salaries that accounts for staff time, charging to strategic planning initiatives, work scope development, recruitment, internal team meetings, and things of that sort. And the last category on this chart represents fringe salaries such as vacation time, discretionary time, sick time, and holidays. So overall, the total expenses are on target with what we had projected for the quarter. But I would like to note that the fringe salaries, which include vacation and sick time, are trending about 8% higher than what was projected. Next slide, please. When looking at historical data, just for the fringe salaries, because they were trending a bit higher, I decided to kind of look into that a little bit. And it's really hard to base some of the budget assumptions on historical trends, because as you can see, they're all over the place, especially during the pandemic. We'll see here in SFY 2021, we had 74% of the prints actually spent compared to what we had projected. And that was the first quarter of SFY 21, which were the first few months of the pandemic. So not a lot of people were taking vacation and the world was like pretty much shut down. So we noticed, you know, people didn't take as much time as what we would expect in the summer months. This year, the reason for this increase is majority of it had to do with a lot of vacation payouts that we had. We had about 7 staff, tenured staff that had left CTPS in Q1, and 5 of them were retirements. And when staff leave, there's a whatever balance of the vacation there's a payout. So we did put that into the assumptions for the budget. However, we had a few more staff members leave than what we had expected. So there was some vacation payouts. We've had some staff use some FMLA and sick leave, which that stuff is hard to predict. So I just wanted to kind of point out the historical trend for the fringe salaries. And then
Haral, can I ask a question, or do you want to do those all at the end?
Sure, yeah.
Is it concerning that fringe is up even though headcount is down? Isn't that a little counterintuitive?
Yeah, so I think that when we have new staff members come in, they get less, they're accruing and using less vacation and sick time than the tenured staff, right? They accrue a lot more than the new staff. So when we had this big chunk of staff leave in July and August, I think that's what contributed to the high, because all of that vacation payout. Now that we have more newer staff, I think the trend will continue to go down. So I don't think it definitely has something to do with less employees on staff, but it depends on how much they accrue.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So,
yeah.
So I know HIPAA can make it hard to come by information, but do we know if any of the FMLA and other illnesses are COVID related?
I don't think I can.
Okay.
I don't even know. Actually,
Okay.
I don't know.
Right, because that would just give us some sense as to expectations. That's the only reason I asked me.
Right.
I don't want to know anyone's personal information, but I know HIPAA, rightfully makes it challenging to have that information. Thank you.
I feel like it's useful just to say that there's a mix, Len. It's not all one thing or another, that there's a range of things. So it's not that, it's directly linked to COVID entirely.
Right. Thank you.
So the leadership team, as far as the revenue sources go, the revenue received, the leadership team is committed to monitoring these trends and strategize ways to increase our revenue numbers over the coming months, because as you know, the expenses are pretty fixed. We're not able to decrease the expenses based on projected numbers. So in Q2, we expect the revenue numbers to increase because we're currently at about 52 employees. We plan on bringing that up to the 60 that we had projected, and staff members we're doing more recruitment in the next few months to bring the staff size to what we had projected. We also expect that work scope development and that would be completed in Q1. So now in Q2, staff can charge to the projects that they had planned on working on. And I would also like to point out that while it's not as meaningful to report on the overhead rate, as it's just very early on in the year, we are continuing to monitor it regularly. So over the next few quarters, I will be presenting the overhead rate and what the projected overhead rate is will be at the end of the year. Next slide, please. Are there any questions that I can answer on the budget? Derek?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So the revenue piece, how is the revenue like defined? I'm just wondering what's the relationship between staffing and how much revenue is received? Is it like what's actually spent in that quarter? Or I guess that's expenses. So I guess I'm just curious about the connection between staffing levels and revenue, because I didn't think MassDOT funds were dependent on how much staffing there was. So I'm just curious about more detail on how that's defined, that piece of it.
Sure. Jonathan, can you go up to the revenue slide so we can kind of reference it? Just, yeah, thank you. So when we budget the $1.3 million for MPO and MassDOT directed PL funds, we're assuming that staff will be charging to the contract at that level in Q1. So what happens is when we don't have the staff charging fully to that contract, we cannot invoice for that work. So the revenue received is the actual invoicing that MassDOT receives, MBTA receives. So the actual is based on all the invoices we have sent out for the work that was completed in Q1.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I think I was just misinterpreting what revenue meant. That makes sense. Okay, thanks.
So
Yeah.
bottom line, Haral, is that first quarter, we're a little off, but it's the first quarter and we're sort of always off in the first quarter, and we'll make it up as the year progresses. Is that a fair assessment?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay.
Brian, if I may, I think that I just want to emphasize again this point about staffing, and this is where our biggest focus is. Again, our expenses, we generally like to stick with the expenses we assumed because we need to expend money on those things. But we have been working really hard to streamline our recruiting and to adjust our policies to be more employee supportive, to be able to continue to retain staff in this incredibly competitive market. So to the degree possible, when we are out recruiting for staff, like we have a job posting out now, as much as any of you can help us identify good candidates and send them to us, that is just one more thing that helps us in this process. But I also know that many agencies are struggling right now in terms of recruitment. So I don't want to be too selfish in that regard, but staffing is really something that we are very heavily focused on to make our budget sound for this year.
Absolutely. There is no magic bullet on that topic, unfortunately. Okay. Haral, is that the end of your presentation?
That is the end of the budget presentation, yes.
Of course, yeah. Well, let me just say thank you. I know we implemented these sort of quarterly updates about a year ago, and it's again, it's not that we're worried about anything. It's just due diligence and staying on top of things. And I do this with my board as well, as Len knows. And it's, again, just a way to keep on top of things and see where the trend is headed. Obviously, we're very confident in how the budget is moving, and believe that the CTPS staff does incredible work and will continue to do so. So thank you for pulling this all together. Len, you unmuted.
I was just saying, it's Brian's world. We just live in it.
Wow, I got to come to Arlington more often, I guess, to be in your world. Okay, let's move on to item 5.
Great, thank you. So next I'd like to present a benefit for staff for your discussion and your approval. If approved, this benefit would allow CTPS to provide a partial reimbursement for an annual Blue Bikes membership. Blue Bikes is a public bike share system throughout Boston and surrounding communities. And so the Blue Bike pricing structure has multiple plans, and we would enroll in the Silver plan. Under this plan, an employee who's interested in the membership would pay for half of the annual membership, while CTPS would pay for the other half. And then the total cost to CTPS per employee would be $45. This membership includes unlimited rides for up to 45 minutes each ride, And any additional time beyond that is a cost directly to the employee. The annual membership is good for 365 days from when the employee signs up. It's not based on a calendar or a state fiscal year. The total potential cost to CTPS in this fiscal year and future fiscal years perhaps would be $2,700 if all of the employees took advantage of this membership. And this number includes future staff that we're planning on hiring. So at this point, Mr. Chair, I can answer any questions or we can open it up for discussion and approval.
Thank you.
Harald, I believe this is what MAPC does, right? We have the same policy.
Yep, correct.
I don't even know what percentage of staff take advantage of it. Did you
So,
guys?
I did. I asked Patrice that question, and she said currently there's only about 5 or 6 staff members that are taking advantage of it. But prior to the pandemic, it was about 15 to 16 people who took advantage of this membership out of a staff of close to 100 folks.
Yeah, I was doing it several years ago, but I stopped right when the pandemic happened. And
Yeah.
I mean, even my T-Pass, I'm only doing the what is it, like a 7 in 20 days or whatever it is, like pass, because I don't need a link pass anymore.
Yeah, the historical numbers that MAPC provided are kind of skewed because of the pandemic and, staff turnover.
So is the 2,700 based on like if every single person does it?
Yeah, if we are assuming 60 employees, 60 head count for this fiscal year. And if every single person does that at $45, it's $2,700.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is you're going to have like a handful of people doing it. So I think it's great benefit. I totally support it. I don't think it's going to cost you $2,700. I think even when the pandemic's over, whatever that means, I still think we're still going to be, in the 15 or so people range. So I don't think this is a huge cost.
Yeah, and then of course, going into the winter months, we might not see people taking advantage of it right away, but maybe in the spring months, we might see an uptick on that.
Len Diggins.
Yeah, I support it, even if even if everyone's taking advantage of it and it costs more. I mean, it fits in with our values. I mean, as an organization and our goals, for our region, our world, and I leave it to the executive director to deal with any issues that people may, or any discussions about how this may benefit only one segment of the staff, and maybe other segments of the staff could use some other kind of benefit. Maybe not for blue light, for something else. So I'm very supportive. So if you need a motion to approve, you got it from me.
I just wanted to ask, is there a similar benefit for parking for the T for other transportation modes?
Not for parking, but we do offer a transit subsidy of $225 per month to staff based on, whatever passes that they use.
Makes sense. Okay. Any further questions?
So maybe just for clarity, just in case it's interesting to you, for parking, we don't offer employees a subsidy for them individually. We do have a set of parking passes that we allow people to use on a flexible basis. They're generally shared, but if there is a need in a particular time for an employee to drive, they're able to do so. But again, I mean, the reason why we have a very strong transit subsidy, I believe, and we wanted to add this to sort of follow those values again, as we said.
Hear, hear. All right, Mr. Diggins, you have a motion to make?
I motion to approve the partial reimbursement of Blue Lights membership for staff.
Is there a second?
I will second that. Sorry.
Thank you, Eric. Jonathan, please call the roll.
Brian Kane,
Yes.
Eric Barassa,
Yes.
Leonard Diggins,
Yes.
and Derek Cravat.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous, Mr. Chair.
Awesome. Thank you, Haral. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is member items. If there are any items members wish to bring up or topics to have presented at the next meeting, now is the time. And we will combine this with agenda item 7, which is the next meeting, which is November 3rd, 9 a.m. before the MPO meeting. Any member items?
So the only thing is, would be awesome if we could have like, before that meeting, like I assume we're gonna be talking about the operations plan at that meeting.
Yes.
Like any materials ahead of time, you guys have done a good job with NEMA, like summarizing kind of like what are the key sort of decisions the group needs to make, or sort of questions before folks. I think anything like that that can really tee those things up would be really helpful. Yeah, so looking to dig into some of the next things on the list.
Absolutely.
Keep an eye out for emails from Logan in advance of the meeting. He typically provides a link to the document that has those kinds of questions. So please do keep an eye out for Logan's emails in that regard.
Great. Thanks, Tegan. Thanks, Logan. Any other member items? I should say thank you, Eric, for your question. We heartily agree. I heartily agree. Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I was going to do the David Muller without objection. We are adjourned. I'm not sure it's legal, but anyway, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See you half
Bye.
hour.